everyone. We are all delegates of TC39. And if you aren't familiar, TC39 is the standards committee that effectively makes your favorite programming language, JavaScript. Legally, we had to call it ECMAScript. Fun fact. I'm Maggie Johnson-Pint. I work for Microsoft. I am a PM on the Azure SDK team. I also have been an active participant in TC39 over the years. Most notably, I originally brought the temporal proposal. That's how I ended up involved. I was a maintainer on Moment.js, and we needed something different than that. So the Moment team decided to get involved in TC39. I'm going to have everyone do intros, and I'm going to have everyone say their favorite upcoming proposal. So I already did my intro. I will note, because you can't, push your own proposal, that I'm going to go with records and tuples as my favorite upcoming proposal. That does come from my history with datetime. So many times we needed immutable constructs. So let's see. Who will I go with next? Rick, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So like she said, my name's Rick Button. I work for Bloomberg in software infrastructure, specifically working on our JavaScript stack. I've been with TC39 for about 2 years, I think. That sounds about right. I ended up involved in TC39 because of record and tuples. My coworker and co-champion, Robin Ricard, kind of came up with this crackpot thing and worked internally on it for a little while, and then we joined forces to work on it. Yeah, and like she said, mentioning your own proposal is a bit of like wearing your favorite band's t-shirt at their concert. So my favorite upcoming proposal is definitely probably pattern matching. It's I really am a fan of like the Lispy functional programming language style expressiveness. So one day it will happen. I'm very excited for it. I think next up is probably Hemanth.
Thank you, Rick. I'm Hemanth. I work with PayPal as a member of technical staff. And how did I get into TC39? Well, I've been following it for a pretty long time, 2008, 2009, and had been pestering Jordan a lot. And at that point of time, when I joined PayPal, I was not able to make it to the committee because it was in person and I was in a different time zone and all of that. And then I happened to move here a couple of years back, and I got into the committee and I got awesome support and all of it from the committee members and super smart people. And today I'm working on a few proposals like string.didn't or error cause and array equality and likes. And I wanted to say my favorite proposal was records and tuple, and the second one was pattern matching, but now both of them are car. And definitely temporal, Maggie covered that too. So I will probably go with this proposal called partial applications that probably not many of them would have heard, which would definitely make the functional programming syntax a bit more interesting in JavaScript. With that, I would like to tag Jordan.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jordan. I work at Coinbase. I maintain hundreds of open source projects, and I've been on TC39 since 2014. It's been a long time. And I was an editor of the specification for about 3 years. So let's see, my favorite proposal. I won't mention the ones that have already been mentioned, and I won't mention my own. So I think I really like do expressions and async do expressions. Those are two separate proposals, but I'm kind of lumping them together. There's a lot of places where it's convenient to use a few statements in expression position, and I'm looking forward to kind of the simplicity of being able to do that. Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to be a little like unmoderated today. We're going to ask each other questions just for the fun of it. So I will kick the first question off. The first question is going to go to Jordan, and it's a big one. And it's this why question. Why does standardizing JavaScript matter? What's the process like? How does a proposal happen? How do I know when a proposal's coming? Like, how does this whole machine work, Jordan?
Yeah. All right. Well, why does it matter? Well, standardizing anything matters in the sense that it makes sure we're all doing stuff in the same way and we can all speak the same, no pun intended, to speak the same language about whatever is being standardized. So JavaScript has this additional wrinkle that it runs in the web browsers that we all use like all the time, to do everything. So it becomes really important that you can write a website in a way that everyone will be able to use the same. So everything that gets standardized is one less thing you have to kind of worry about as you're deploying to an infinite number of devices that you don't control throughout the world. So as far as what's the process like, that can vary widely. It can be fun, it can be torturous, it can be, very pedantic. I think it takes, there are times when it takes a special kind of personality to not run screaming from the room. And, but that said, I really enjoy myself. I think that it has been very enlightening to consider lots of different perspectives and use cases beyond the ones I would normally have considered when trying to design features for languages. And it has modified and kind of tempered my opinions about things a lot over the years. When I first showed up, I was kind of expecting to come in and hate a bunch of things. And it turns out that when I understand the reasons why things are the way they are, that, it's a lot, I can sort of move past it instead of just grumbling about something I don't like. As far as, so how does a proposal get finished, right? After ES 2015 or ES 6, we added a new stage process. So there's stage 0 through 4. The quick and dirty way I describe them is stage 0 is I have a crazy idea. Stage 1 is maybe the idea is not so crazy, right? That's when the committee has said yes, we want to spend more time looking into the problem. How do we solve whatever problem we're looking at? Stage 2 is when we're pretty sure that the solution looks like this. So that's when the committee is basically saying, we are, pretty certain this is going to go into the language. We're pretty sure this is what the shape of the solution is going to look like. And then we kind of iron out all the details inside stage 2. And then stage 3 is time for everyone to start shipping it and implementing it. And at that point, usually you only expect changes when you couldn't have possibly anticipated something sooner than the time you ship it. And then stage 4 is, sort of the, mission accomplished banner. It's when you actually merge it into the specification and it becomes official. And as far as how when proposals are coming, there's lots of places you can look. You can, you could certainly read the notes for each meeting, which are long and very archaic, or not archaic, obscure. But you can read those, which are published about 10 days after every meeting. But we also have the proposals repository on GitHub, TC39/proposals, and that's typically updated throughout the meeting. And so you can kind of browse the list of proposals at each stage, and each one will link to its own repository where you can ask questions or read about the proposal. Okay, well, so the next question, I'm actually going to ask Maggie back. How can a person make a business case for their organization to get involved with TC39 and other web standards?
Sure. So there's kind of an underlying question there, of course, which is, how does anyone get involved with TC39 and web standards? And it's worth noting that officially, to participate in the TC39 process, you need to be with an ECMA member company. So ECMA is this international standards organization. They standardize a lot of things, not just JavaScript. There's a whole bunch of IoT standards, wearable standards. There's quite a lot of stuff in ECMA. And technically to participate in TC39, you would be a delegate of a member organization. So Microsoft is a member organization to TC39, and there is a membership fee. So what it comes down to is, if you want to be an official delegate, you need to get your organization to decide this is worth it for them. I think it's interesting, obviously at Microsoft, where we have a browser and TypeScript and stuff, we have a pretty vested business case for involvement in TC39, but a lot of organizations have gotten involved, and I think it comes down to finding the thing that really matters. When I first brought temporal, I didn't realize how much help I would get from Bloomberg. who had just joined ECMA. And the reality was that Bloomberg was feeling a really strong business need when you think about the kind of business that Bloomberg runs to have a great datetime API. And so that was, I think, one of the major drivers of them coming to the table. Not that I want to speak, Rick, for your company. But I think it's finding that place where your business sees a gap and really, sees a need to advance, whether that's in the performance space, whether there's APIs that you think that you're missing. I also think that there's a lot of, there's an argument to be made for goodwill, for community involvement, for saying we want to be good community players in something that we use so much. But the biggest thing is finding that case where you're like, this is critical path to the product that we make, and we can be better through the standards process.
Awesome.
I guess the next question we'll go with, this one's going back to Jordan, is what are some of the challenges of standardizing the language in the long term, especially, you were talking about the yearly spec updates, especially given the yearly spec updates?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the bigger precepts that the committee has is don't break the web. The canonical example we always use is the Space Jam movie website from '95. I think that it's very difficult to design a good programming language anyway. There's a lot of programming languages to look at for both good things and mistakes. And it is extra difficult when that design is constrained by every decision you've made in the past, right? We can't just make a new version of JavaScript. We have to keep the web that we already have. So that's a really big challenge. And there's a lot of things that we decide to do, not because we would have done it if we were designing it from scratch, but because it is the most sensible evolution from the current state of the language to the next place we want to take it. I think that the yearly spec updates have actually been really beneficial. Some years there's many things, and some years there's very little things that are in it. It's more, what I found most helpful from it is that we kind of treat the specification as a living standard now. So the specification that renders on GitHub and on the TC39.es website, that's the latest version of the standard. And the yearly snapshot is kind of not particularly useful anymore. It's necessary for the way ECMA operates, and it's necessary, some tooling and books and stuff to refer to a specific edition year, but browsers don't actually implement features in chunks a year at a time. So there might be some browsers or engines that have ES 2019 features, but are missing an ES 2016 feature. So the year doesn't really help you too much. It's just kind of a historical note of when it finished the process. So I think that one of the bigger challenges is when do we say no? There's a lot of folks in the room in a TC39 meeting, and they all have slightly different priorities and philosophies about things. Some people, are very enthusiastic about adding things to the language, improving the language, right? And that's an admirable goal. But I think there's other folks who are more concerned about preventing something that we would think is a mistake in a few years that we then have to support for the next 50. A phrase that I've heard over time a lot is the future is longer than the past. Basically, any decision that we ship in JavaScript is permanent. And so for myself, at least, I think that it's very important that we're cautious, and that while it's great that we can move the things through the proposal process quickly when they seem to be the appropriate choice, I think that we have to kind of do that in a measured and careful way to make sure that we're not, making a mistake we can't unmake. Okay, well, I think that was, so for the next question, I'm going to ask Rick, what are some of your favorite resources to share with others who want to learn more about standardization?
Yeah, okay. So this is a bit of a complex question, and I'll give you hopefully less of a complex answer, because standardization is this weird beast where it's not really programming in a sense. It's more like being a lawyer, but you have to have a background in programming first. So it's a bit weird. And I'm going to mention a bunch of links that I'll post in the Q&A Discord channel after we're done here, or after I'm done with this answering this question. So don't feel like you have to write all this down. But there's a lot of resources. The benefit of us kind of working on the language that runs the web is that we put a lot of this information out on the web. So I guess the first part is just the spec itself. So the spec, as we, just like Jordan mentioned, is kind of a live, like moving specification. It's just hosted on the internet. So you can go to tc39.es, you can read the spec. It's written in English. It's surprisingly readable for the most part. You know, if you ignore all the variable hoisting and like all the nonsense that JavaScript has accumulated over the years, it's surprisingly readable. It has documentation for how the majority of it operates. And it's a really good, useful resource for how, like, what the end goal of standardization looks like. Because one of the first problems with standardization is, well, what do you actually do, right? Because at the end of the day, various browser vendors ship code that runs JavaScript, but like there's a bunch of steps in between there, and like to visualize what that means and like what the deliverable output is kind of weird.